fights that you can have, I am most excited about. This fight for the UFC Lightweight Championship between Benson Henderson and Anthony Pettis is a rematch that many people have been waiting for a long time, especially Benson Henderson, who has revenge on his mind. He wanted to leave the WEC wearing that belt, and Anthony Pettis took it from him.
I did know in the back of my head at some point in time I was going to be able to get my hands on Pettis again, and now that the time is here, I'm very excited for it.
It was a very close fight. I had it even going into that 5th round, and what won it was that kick off the cage from Anthony Pettis that he did in just a spectacular fashion.
I already knew going into that 5th round that I had to do something to prove that I was better than this guy, and luckily for me, it landed flush.
I think the rematch is going to be very different. Benson Henderson is better conditioned than he was in the past. Everyone who has gone in trying to take away his belt, he has beaten. And he just has that aura right now of invincibility that a champion should have.
I put my heart and soul into this. I don't hold anything back. Me inside that cage is everything.
Ben was one of the guys that was always on my radar. He's a very good fighter, very talented wrestler, knows how to mix it up very well, and he has that will to win.
Third takedown of the fight for Benson.
Benson loves to take people down. He's got a grinding style of wrestling where he gets you up against the cage, he makes your life miserable, he imposes his will, he uses his size and strength to tire you out, and he's improved his striking leaps and bounds since the first fight against Pettis. So if he is forced to stay on the feet against Anthony Pettis, he is much, much better on the feet than when they first faced each other. But he loves to impose his will on the ground. That's where Benson Henderson is very dangerous.
Trying to finish it here.
I think I'm better in every facet on the ground. If it probably takes place on the ground, I'll beat him up there. You'll see plenty of ground and pound. If it probably takes place standing up, you'll see plenty of punches and exchanges standing up. I think I have the wrestling to dictate either or. If Pettis tries to take me down, I don't think he's good enough to take me down. If I decide to take him down, I don't think he's good enough to not let me take him down.
There's a guillotine. Can he finish it?
Power for power, I would say I'm more powerful than Pettis.
He's very powerful. It's not power. I mean, when you're in there, it's not how strong you are. It's how can you set your moves up? How can you be 2 steps ahead of your opponent? How can you make your opponent make the mistake of walking in and catching him?
I do a pretty good job of not getting hit in my fights. I'm going to keep doing that against Pettis, too.
The only loss that Benson Henderson has experienced fighting in the WEC or in the UFC has been against Anthony Showtime Pettis. He wants to go in there and show that, listen, you're in the UFC now, this is my belt, and I'm going to show you why.
When Ben Henderson won that belt, that was when I started thinking about the rematch right away. I beat this guy, that's my belt, and I deserve to be at the top of the top.
Anthony Pettis was supposed to get a title shot when he came into the UFC as WEC champ, but his whole plans were derailed. And he was scheduled to fight for the belt at 145 pounds against Jose Aldo. Then he got injured, and here he is, and it seems like destiny.
There's so much history behind it. You couldn't write a better story.
Without a doubt, Anthony Showtime Pettis' nickname is well-deserved. He's one of the most exciting fighters I have ever seen in the UFC. He does techniques in the cage that people are afraid to do in training.
You watch all my fights, something new always happens, and that's not me trying to do that, it's just my fight game. I'm that type of guy that just knows how to set things up. Every punch, every kick sets up a big move, and the fans love it.
What makes Anthony such a dangerous standard fighter in my eyes is that he's unpredictable. You don't know what he's going to do. But at this point, you know he's going to be unpredictable, so that makes him a little bit less unpredictable.
Ben Henderson isn't superior anywhere to me. I prefer to stand up with him, but that being said, I don't mind going to the ground.
On the ground, Anthony Pettis is no joke either. This is a guy who has excellent submissions. He's very good at getting back to his feet.
I put the time, I put the work in to become the best in the world and show them I'm the best in the world. I beat Ben Henderson once, I can do it again. You're going to see the best Anthony Pettis has ever been.
Pettis and I fight once again. I'm going to make it a very sad night for him. Anthony Pettis is not leaving that octagon with my belt.
This fight between Josh Barnett and Frank Mir is a fight between 2 of the most dangerous heavyweights in UFC history. Both have knockout power, crazy submissions. These guys have years and years of experience, and they both want a shot at that belt again in the UFC.
Thunderous takedown by Barnett.
Frank Mir is a true martial artist. And what I love about Frank Mir is that he's always looking for new techniques, looking for ways to evolve, and he's a dangerous guy. We've seen what he's done to legends.
Going for that title, I'm putting myself in the center of all the most dangerous fighters in the world. And I realize that adversity is going to make it to where I have to rise to the occasion or die trying.
This is the best Frank Mir has ever looked.
The guy is an all-around fighter. While striking isn't his super go-to thing, the guy can strike. Wrestling is really mediocre, but takes people down, you know?
His confidence is actually going to be my best attribute. If he was actually fearful and knew what I was capable of doing to him, he would avoid the ground. It's going to make it a much more difficult fight. With Josh has enough confidence in his ground ability that we'll go to the ground, and he's not going to be afraid to test it there, so I can take advantage and show him that I'm going to catch him. If I get him around the deep waters in the ground fight, he's going to drown.
Unbelievable!
Frank Mir has the most UFC fights out of any heavyweight out there. He has fought the best and beaten the best. But he's on a little bit of a skid here, and he realizes that a win over a great name like Josh Barnett puts him right back into contention.
The opportunity to go out there and take out Josh, you know, it's huge. Anytime you bring up catch wrestling or submission grappling, my name inevitably comes up in the conversation, so does Josh's name. And I've always felt that I'm better.
Josh Barnett was one of the most promising mixed martial arts fighters in the world. Back in 2002, he became the youngest champion in UFC history. He had just beaten Randy Couture for the heavyweight belt, and then he tested positive for steroids.
That whole part of my life was a real crash course in how complex things can really become. I am a different person than I was when I was 24, as should anybody be.
Now it's his chance at redemption.
Having that 10 pounds of gold back in my hand again is important. If I'm not fighting to that title, then I'm not fighting to be the best.
I think Barnett's a tough guy. He's not exceptional in one area, really. He's not the professional boxer level. I don't think he's world champion on the ground individually. But I think as a combined art, he's one of the best mixed martial artists in the heavyweight division.
If you want to look at our records, I have more wins than he has fights.
Both Josh Barnett and Frank Mir are finishers. Those guys will live by the sword and die by the sword, and I don't see this fight going the distance. I think one of these guys are either going to submit the other or knock the other one out.
I think I'm the better striker on the feet. I know I hit harder. I think he uses his stand-up more or less to kind of mark you and touch you and get you sidetracked to close the distance and get a takedown. Whereas when I'm throwing strikes, I'm trying to hope to make sure that strike finishes the fight.
Whether he's a better striker or how hard he hits is irrelevant until he gets in the ring with me. I have an over 80% finishing ratio. I will finish Frank Mir, be it on the ground or on the feet or wherever it ends up.
There's no way in his career he's ever even remotely been as devastating as I am. And if he thinks he's going to find that opportunity in our fight to try to find out, it's the worst person in the world to go ahead and go for a submission from this one. Devastating submissions, no one thinks of Josh Barnett, they think of Frank Mir.
People not tapping and allowing him to tear their stuff off, I don't think that really makes you devastating. I get a hold of stuff and people sometimes tap early because they're already well aware of that I will tear everything off. And if I'll tear your arm off, if you don't tap, I'm tearing something else.
Oh, he's hurt badly.
We all think we're the best, but my record speaks for itself. You're only the best once the hand gets raised afterwards. Everything else is just talk, it's cheap.
I want the greatest Frank Mir that has ever walked this earth. So when I completely destroy this guy, he knows the best he could ever be will never beat me.
Everybody be honest right now. If you had to post a fight against me, are you going to let me get your arm? Are you going to post up real easy? Are you going to let me grab your ankle and not freak out? You're going to freak out.